All right, we have to dive into PACT. PACT is a beast. I am going to start with just my Southwest Asia. My Vietnam vets, you need like 25 million videos to even begin to explain yours. All right, so PACT. PACT is an umbrella. I want you guys to think of PACT as an umbrella term of a bunch of shit that Congress is holding their hand up and saying, yes, we know that they were exposed to so much shit and it has caused a bunch of problems. We're owning that. We have to compensate them. How does this even work? All right, so the locations for PACT are as follows. Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi, the neutral zone between Iraq and Saudi, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Oman, Afghanistan, Djibouti, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Somalia, Syria, Turkey, Uzbekistan, my K2 basers here, Yemen. The bodies of water, so for naval, or if you were Marines and you guys had to get to one of these places, if you were here, Gulf of Aden, Oman, Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, the Red Sea. All right, so from here, this asterisk meaning airspace not included. So for my pilots, my refuelers, your crew chiefs, anyone that you guys were just flying the mission, blowing stuff up, why you were only in the airspace is between you and your command. That means Afghanistan, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Syria, Turkey. So these guys are not part of the MUCMI. You still qualify for burning, like the burn pits and stuff. But if you only were flying in these asterisk countries and you were literally in a plane and never touched down into any other places, you would not qualify. All right, so burn pits. The burn pit section of the list, there's two countries that do not qualify at all for burn pit, and that's going to be Israel and Turkey. So what does that even mean? That means that if you deployed to Israel or Turkey, then you would not qualify for any of the burn pit presumptions. You would qualify for the MUCMI presumptives. All right, so I want to get into what this means. Let me get out of here. All right, let's start with my burn pits. So this is the 38 CFR 3.320, and I want to go over the presumptives. What does a presumptive mean? So a presumptive means that, long and short of it, the military is like, holy shit, we fucked up. They're getting all of these diseases because they were constantly inhaling all of this stuff. We're going to start small and get into it. These diseases are chronic in nature, asthma, rhinitis, and sinusitis, to include rhinosinusitis. And it says that the following chronic diseases will be service connected if manifested to any degree, so like 0 up. And it says even though there is no evidence of such disease during the military time. So what does that mean for you? Let's just say that you got out of the military and you developed asthma. In your records, you never got diagnosed with asthma, rhinitis, sinusitis, any of these guys. And now all of a sudden you have it because it is on this list. The secretary now deems, holy shit, they have it. We have to compensate. They do not need a medical opinion. So you would go and you would apply. I'm trying to make this as easy as possible because it's very easy to get confused. So let's start small. You're applying for asthma and you're going to go on your 526, put asthma, presumptive of PACT, current diagnosis. You want to get those medical records if it's not at the VA, and you want to show them that you have, in fact, a diagnosis of asthma. So when the VA gets your application, they're not going to order you a medical opinion. And if they do order a medical opinion, they've ordered it wrong. All they need to do is order the DBQ of asthma, and you're going to go and you're going to take, hopefully you'll have a spirometer test, and you will get diagnosed, or excuse me, you will get compensated for asthma. You still have to qualify at the thresholds. When the rater looks at your claim, you can't just have a diagnosis of asthma and, oh, boom, because it's a presumptive, you're now you're going to get 100%. It's not going to happen. You have to show the severity of that. So it's the same for this. These are the most common ones that veterans are getting because of the burn pits. So moving on to the cancers, all of these cancers of the larynx, trachea, the adenocarcinoma of the trachea, lung, carcinoma of the lung, the salivary, wait, I can't even pronounce that, salivary gland, excuse me, all of these guys right now. If you have active cancer, what you want to do is you were at one of those locations that we mentioned before. I want you to write on your 526 active cancer, presumptive of PACT, and you're going to put please RFD on your application. I need you to tell them so a friggin' 3-year-old can know what to do with it. Because in the 38 CFR, if there's active cancer, and because this is a presumptive, it automatically gets rated and you sit at 100%. And then you're going to have a routine future exam to see if it's gotten better. Only if you have active cancer, and you have to make sure to get those records and submit it with your application, or it's just going to stall it. If the military or if the VA has to go get your records, who knows how long it's going to take. All right, let me see. Let's go down. This is just going over all the locations. All right, so these guys right here are the only presumptives to include these for burn pits. Now I want to go on to the MUCMI. MUCMI, I couldn't find a good video on MUCMI on YouTube. It's very ambiguous. It's very confusing. A lot of people get very confused. I'm going to try to break it down as simple as possible. So a MUCMI is theoretically an undiagnosed illness. No one can find out what the hell is wrong with you. You're always tired. Maybe your bones hurt. And then you just keep getting tests after tests after test, and you have all the symptoms of something, but no one knows what the hell is wrong with you. So the key word is it cannot be diagnosed. Time and time again, I see sleep apnea that's diagnosed. You've got all of these things that are diagnosed, and it wouldn't fall under MUCMI because MUCMI means you can't have a diagnosis. Generally, MUCMIs fall into clusters. So let's take, for instance, your chronic fatigue. Let's say you've got sleep issues, so fatigue. Maybe you're breaking out in all of these weird rashes and no one knows why. Your headaches, joint pains, like I said, fog, you can't eat right. Maybe you're losing a lot of weight. And for female, it messes with your menstrual cycle. So MUCMIs, again, I have to stress, you've had test after test after test and no one knows what's going on. And you served in one of those locations that we had talked about before. Just because you're considered a 117 and a 119 does not mean that so 117 locations are going to be the MUCMI and the burn pits are the 119. Just because you were in a 119 doesn't mean that you were in a 117 and vice versa. But generally speaking, the exceptions were what? Djibouti, Lebanon, Somalia, Uzbekistan, and Yemen, that you would not qualify for the MUCMI. So what we'll see a lot of is headaches is a really big one. And let's just pretend that you deployed, you're filling out your 526, and you put headaches. And you had no in-service diagnosis, so you're not going to get a direct medical opinion because we cannot tie your headaches, or the VA cannot tie your headache to any in-service complaints. But you are competent enough to say, dude, I have friggin' headaches and they hurt. You go to the doctor. The doctor has diagnosed you with headaches. That is it. There's no other symptoms. There's no fatigue. There's no joint pain. There's no skin rashes. There's no clusters of 3. It's not going to be a MUCMI because they have diagnosed you with a headache, and it is not because they have deemed it is not because they can't figure out what's going on with you. You just have headaches. You're rated for PTSD and you get headaches. They go hand in hand. So generally, you're not going to get rated under this. You're still going to be warranted a TERA medical opinion. Again, this gets very confusing, so bear with me. You have no in-service direct complaints of headaches. You deployed to one of these locations. The VSR, you should be getting 2 exams or 2 medical opinions. It's going to be the same DBQ. It's going to be your headache DBQ with a TERA medical opinion. And then you are warranted a Gulf War Gen Med exam and a Gulf War DBQ. So you should theoretically be getting 2 medical opinions. All right, so your functional gastrointestinal disorders, excluding structural. So a lot of these claims you will have GERD, and if you're diagnosed with a structural gastrointestinal disease, it does not qualify because it's the way that it's structured. That is how you were born, and you being exposed, the secretary has deemed wasn't their fault. So you're out. Unfortunately, I have no good news for you. But if it's functional, then the secretary has deemed that it perhaps could be because of your exposure. Let's see, another thing, sleep apnea. A lot of people think that sleep apnea should fall under the MUCMI because it says fatigue, sleep disturbances. No, if you have a diagnosis, this is the key that I want you guys to remember. If you're diagnosed, the doctor's like, yep, dude's got this, it's out because it is diagnosed. It's when you're constantly, I cannot tell you enough, it's when you're constantly like, something is wrong with me. Am I losing my friggin' mind? No one can find out what the hell is wrong with me. It's because all of those toxins they mess with your neurons, they mess with just whatever it is, and it creates all of this stuff because you guys burn so much stuff and you're exposed to so many toxic things, and they don't know that to this day they don't know they're still studying what it could do to you guys. So again, I just have to emphasize, there's no one can explain it. No one can explain it. And these are the signs right here. All right. Then it gets a little bit trickier. Let's say that you did go to one of those locations that we just talked about, but you don't have the presumptives. You don't have asthma, you don't have rhinitis, sinusitis, or any of those cancers. The MUCMI is out because you're diagnosed with headaches, you're diagnosed with IBS, you're diagnosed with GERD, you're diagnosed with, maybe whatever, joint pain or something like that. Your last tier, I like to think of it as there's PACT here, you're going in headaches. we're going to do it this way. You did have in-service complaints of headaches. let's say you went to the 117 or 119 location. This is how this is going to happen. You are going to fill out your 526 and you're going to put headache. If you 100% know that you would in-service, if you have your records and you see headache complaints on there, you're going to put headache, direct medical opinion. This is on your exam. Excuse me, this is on your 526 or your supplemental. I want you to put headaches, in-service complaints, direct medical opinion. Because you went overseas, you now qualify for a TERA medical opinion. So I want you to put TERA medical opinion. If you're diagnosed with the headaches, then it does not qualify for the MUCMI, remember. So with that being said, there's 3 things, or 4 theoretically, that do not qualify for TERA. And I'm going to go over them. So any presumptive, so this has nothing to do with the list that we just looked at of all the presumptives. So let's just say that you did deploy, you were exposed to asbestos, you were exposed to some toxic stuff in your job. Right now, we're sitting at the last stop that we can help you, and that's a TERA medical opinion. You cannot get a TERA medical opinion for the following things. So the veteran claims service connection for a non-presumptive disability that is based on physical trauma. Hearing loss is not considered physical trauma. So if you broke a bone, any muscle or ligament tear, a meniscal tear, if you dislocated any joints, osteoarthritis or traumatic arthritis of any joint, spinal fusion, spinal stenosis, spondylolisthesis, however you pronounce that, any DDD, so cold, electric, or thermal burns, osteoitis deformans, metatarsalgia, pes planus. This is a really popular one, but it's not TERA related. It means it's not caused by toxic exposure risk activity. Plantar fasciitis, a TBI, the heterotopic ossification, lower extremity bone shortening. So if you claimed any of this stuff, you cannot get a TERA medical opinion. If you claimed it and it's in service complaints, claim away. You're going to get a direct medical opinion. All right, so this says important. If the claim is for a joint condition and the evidence is unclear as to whether the joint condition is related to physical trauma, claims processors should assume the joint condition is related to physical trauma, unless there is competent medical or scientific evidence of record to the contrary. The veteran does not need to state the claimed joint condition is due to physical trauma in order for the VA to apply the TERA exclusion. What the hell does that mean? That means if you have a joint condition, and let's say that you got a kick-ass doc, and he's like, yeah, man, this joint condition is not because he banged his arm on the wall or he fell down. This is because of his toxic exposure. There is competent scientific journals. Upload all that stuff. And I want you guys to say, I want you to put on this TERA exclusion, or how could you word this? Do not exclude joint condition for a TERA exception. I am providing competent medical opinion or medical nexus or scientific evidence to prove otherwise. Something along those lines. All right. If the claim for joint or muscle pain is from a veteran who served in the 117 location, review the claim for evidence of trauma to the joint, and either we would apply, or the VA would apply the TERA exception if the trauma to the joint is shown, or apply the undiagnosed MUCMI TERA. So basically, if you can prove that that trauma to the joint is because of body aches, it's undiagnosed, no one knows what the hell happened to you, it would be considered a MUCMI. This is why it's so important for you guys to study this stuff and to know your claim very, very personal. So when they come back and they put it as a TERA exception, you can say, hey, actually, it is not a TERA exception, and I deserve that MUCMI or that TERA medical opinion. Okay, so mental disorders. Unfortunately, this makes me a little upset because there is documentation that the Gulf War and all those toxins really wreaked havoc mentally, but the secretary, for whatever reason, decided that the mental disorders are exempt. So it does not matter if you, whatever you're claiming, your mental condition, you cannot get a TERA medical opinion for that. So if you were exposed to toxic exposures and now you have depression or anxiety or whatever said mental condition, it's a TERA exception, no questions asked. So these guys are my, for my Agent Orange. And again, I want to do a separate video on that because it's just very nuanced. And the last, Oscar, the last thing is number 4, claims for disabilities that manifested during military service or with an etiology not associated with toxic exposures. So let's just say that you had in-service joint pain and it was before you deployed. 9 times, and they've already know why it happened, and say it was joint pain or a skin rash or something. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a TERA excluded contention, and you're not going to get a TERA medical opinion. So I'll just kind of go over some of these condition-based exceptions. So the veteran claimed right knee strain. Since this is a condition due to a physical trauma, it would be an exception under the TERA examination requirements, and the claims processor would not order a TERA examination with the medical opinion. Hold on, my dog's barking. All right, so these are some condition-based exceptions. The veteran claimed right knee strain. It's a condition due to physical trauma. So number 1. It's an exception. You're not going to get a medical opinion. End of story. No questions asked. A veteran claimed service connection for pseudofolliculitis. That's the shaving waiver. Service treatment records show complaints of in-service rashes, and current medical records show that the veteran continues to experience this post-service. So direct service connection is warranted. You're going to get a direct medical opinion because it was in service. Let's see. Since the condition manifested during military service, and a medical opinion is not necessary to decide the issue, it would be an exception under the TERA examination requirements, and the claims processors would not complete a toxic risk exposure activity. So because it was in service, it's going to fall under number 4, claims for disabilities that manifested during military service. All right, so this one, the only participation in TERA that is established is based on an entry exposure in the tracking system. So for ISER is, so when you guys do post-deployment surveys, they take those, and that's called explicitly saying I was exposed to. And sometimes if that's the only tracking system, it was just your post, you can't use those saying that you were exposed to some hazards. It's nuanced. I don't want to get too much into it. Let's see. So there are circumstances where an entry in that ISER program does not demonstrate that the veteran performed an activity with a potential for exposure to toxic substances, chemicals, or airborne hazards. This may include entries such as routine health encounters, but where there is otherwise no evidence that the veteran was potentially exposed to toxic substances, chemicals, or airborne hazards during the military service. Based on these type types of circumstances, and pursuant to Section 1168, claims processors should not order a disability examination based on TERA. So that's basically saying if they cannot prove that you were exposed to anything, you weren't deployed, let's say that you were a desk clerk and there wasn't any exposure, but you're claiming something like headaches, the VA cannot order you a TERA medical opinion because there is no proof that you were ever exposed to any sort of chemicals. Let me see. I'm actually not going to go over anything in ISER. Let's see what this one is. All right, so the veteran claimed sleep apnea. The veteran's ISER entry documents treatment for a right ankle sprain during active military. No other potential TERA, so you were not exposed to any other toxic exposures at all that's shown on the ISER system. Since the veteran has an ISER entry during active duty, TERA participation is conceded. However, since the only participation in a TERA that is established is based on an entry in ISER that does not corroborate or correspond to an activity carried out by the veteran during the active duty that could result in potential exposure to toxic substances, chemicals, or airborne hazards, this would be an exception under the TERA examination requirements, and you would not get a TERA medical opinion. So basically what this is saying is you claim sleep apnea, cannot anywhere in your OMPF, your MOS, nothing, you did not deploy, you were not exposed to any toxic exposures that the VA can concede, you're not going to get a toxic exposure medical opinion for sleep apnea. Example number 2, the veteran claimed migraines. The only ISER entry consists of questions where the veteran self-reported that they believe they were exposed to burn pits while they were in combat. However, review of the complete personnel file fails to show that the veteran was ever deployed, was ever in combat. There's no other potential toxic exposures. So that means that the veteran has an ISER entry during active duty. The TERA participation is conceded. However, because the only participation in that TERA is established based on the veteran's self-reports, so the veteran filled out somewhere, maybe at a med exam, yeah, I deployed and I was exposed to burn pits. But you're lying and there is no record that you were ever deployed, you're not going to get a TERA medical opinion. Do I agree with some of this stuff? No, because a lot of records earlier in the day didn't prove or didn't show that you guys deployed. But that's very, very rare. That's more of maybe Vietnam era, things like that. All right, you guys. I know that this is a lot to unpack. It's kind of confusing. So if I did a poor job explaining all of this stuff, just feel free to leave a comment or just ask away. All right, I know that this is a lot to unpack. It's a lot to digest. I do want to revisit the locations again. All right, so we have Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi, the neutral zone between Iraq and Saudi, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Oman, Afghan, Djibouti, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Somalia, Syria, Turkey, Uzbekistan, K2 bases. You guys just got added, 2-3 months ago because you were exposed to, a lot of the buildings had lead paint. The OMPF main building had lead paint, asbestos, a lot of crap in the soil. So if you were K2, hit me up or go do your research because you guys are now part of PACT. Uzbekistan, Yemen, the water bodies, Gulf of Aden, Oman, Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, the Red Sea. So your MUCMIs that are excluded. So if you just have no one can figure out what is wrong with you, and you were in Djibouti, Lebanon, Somalia, Uzbekistan, and Yemen, you are exempt from the MUCMI Gen Med, but you are not exempt from getting a TERA medical opinion. All right, as always, here are the references. I always like to give you guys references because whatever comes out of my mouth has to be backed up by the law. And these are the laws. So your 38 CFR 3.320 A5 and your 38 CFR 1119 locations. I will put these in the description. And then your Gulf War MUCMIs, your 38 CFR 3.317E2. All right, you guys, as always, thank you for listening to me yap about this. And I hope that it helped a little bit. As always, you guys can feel free to reach out to me at any time. Good luck, and thank you guys so much for serving our country.